Hello, Pastor Aaron here with your devotional thought for today. I've been meditating on this week's gospel reading from Luke chapter 24, which comes right after Jesus' encounter with some disciples on the road to Emmaus. This section of the text picks up with a picture of the disciples huddled together in fear. They look like a bunch of cowards. It's hard to believe that these 11 guys would be the men who started a peaceful takeover of the world for the empire of Jesus. They're afraid, even though they've heard from the women who went to the tomb that Easter morning, who heard from an angel that Jesus had risen from the dead. I'm sure there are a lot of things producing fear, uncertainty, anxiety, and worry for you nowadays. So you can probably sympathize with the disciples. We have lots of things to worry about. We have the normal things like going to work or school, paying the bills, maintaining our health or maintaining healthy relationships, running kids to this, that, or the other thing. And then there's this deficit spending that the government keeps on doing, inflation, and maybe even the threat of hyperinflation. Then there's the pandemic, of course, still, and the questions that come with that, like, what has this done to my academics or that of my children or grandchildren? What if I catch the virus or somebody I love falls ill? Should I get the vaccine? If so, which one? A vaccine passport system? What in the world is that? Or maybe it's your growing suspicion that our country is headed towards absolute moral decay, economic collapse, and or a totalitarian regime. Those are legitimate fears, but how about the disciples? They had reason to be afraid and uncertain, don't you think? Their leader was just crucified, and they were guilty by association. They could be nailed to a cross that week. I imagine they were all sitting there silent, staring at the floor, trying to make sense of it all. Jesus then does 4 things to comfort his disciples. Number 1, he suddenly appeared to them in their midst and said, "Peace to you." Oftentimes the words of Jesus are enough to comfort, but this time it didn't quite cut it. They were still terrified. How do you think you would have responded? Think about that for a second. Peace? What? Huh? We were terrified, but now we're utterly terrified because of your magical and sudden appearance. Well, the second thing Jesus does is he showed them his hands and his feet. Here's evidence. Here's the hard facts that he wasn't a ghost or a spirit, but he was with them in flesh and blood. He bid them to come and touch him, see the nail marks in his hands and the spears in his side. Well, they still couldn't believe it was actually Jesus. So thirdly, he asked for some fish to eat. They obliged, then he ate in front of them. This would all have been enough for any scientist to confirm Jesus' actual physical resurrection. What Jesus did was observable and repeatable. As if all that wasn't enough, finally and fourthly, Jesus opened up their minds to understand the scriptures and all that was prophesied about the Christ. There. That was enough. You could probably understand that anything shy of what Jesus did for the disciples to confirm his actual resurrection from the dead would have fallen short. As it was, the disciples had enough to dispel their doubts and fears and walk forthrightly then into Jerusalem with incredible joy, amazement, and confidence that because Jesus rose from the dead, they need not fear anything, not even the threat of death by the powers that be. And the testimony of the apostles was enough for generation upon generation, for millions upon millions of believers thereafter until this day. And may that peace that comes from hearing the apostles' testimony of the Christ and his resurrection be enough for you today, no matter what fears, doubts, and uncertainty you may have. Thanks for listening, and may God bless your day.